Hey everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my channel, and today I'm super excited to be talking with you about some of my dark academia book recommendations as well as some movie and TV recs. Alright, so I hope you guys like the setting. This is my study room. I'm so excited to share a full house tour, but I probably won't do that until like March of next year, March of 2025, because I do want to complete pretty much all the projects, and we're nearly there, but it's for sure going to take at least a few more months. But I love this study. It's definitely very dark academia to me, so hopefully it gets you in the mood, in the November mood. To me, the setting of dark academia is very cold and blustery, lots of leaves on the ground, like no leaves left on the trees, but not quite winter yet. And that's why I do want to talk about movies and TV as well, because I feel like they really capture the November energy. And honestly, this year I am pretty ready for Christmas, but I want to spend the next few weeks just really soaking up November. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about some of these books that I've picked out. Honestly, I have a lot of books that could fit into November, fit into dark academia. You guys know I love to read a lot of thrillers, so I would say in general, thrillers are just really great to read this time of year. But a lot of the books that I did pick out are a little bit more literary fiction or fantastical vibes. But up first, we do have a bit of a mystery, and that is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And I feel like I've talked about this book in a few different recommendation videos, so forgive me, but I feel like this is just, honestly, of all these books, this is like the most perfect November book to me. This book was the first book that Stuart Turton wrote. I believe he has 3 out now, and I really like all of them, but this one is my favorite. And the setting is an old mansion, and there's all these people in the mansion, and there is one guy who is trying to figure out who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. But there is a fantastical element to it. The main character, Aiden, wakes up every day in a different body. So he's living every day as a different person and trying to solve the crime. And there was a pretty big twist at the end that I did not see coming that made this book even more interesting, but this was very well written. I thought it is a lot to read. You definitely have to focus on what's going on or you can get confused pretty easily. But absolutely, this is an easy 5 stars for me. I love this book. Next up, we've got Circe by Madeline Miller. This book was pretty popular when it came out, but I would say the most famous book by this author is The Song of Achilles, which I would also recommend reading during this month if you have not read that one yet. I really like Madeline Miller's writing style. She has a PhD in classics. So yeah, very cool. She's definitely a very educated author, but she has a really beautiful writing style. It's like the perfect amount of almost like poetic kind of writing. It's not too much where it's kind of annoying, which I feel like some authors get to, but I feel like her writing style really fits for the type of fiction that she writes. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. This one follows Circe, and I did know a little bit about the Achilles story before I read that book, but I really did not know too much about Circe at all. So if you like mythology and you haven't picked this one up yet, definitely would recommend during November. Now I have a book that I think is really weird. It's definitely going to be a hit or miss for you guys. Some of you might love it, some of you might hate it, but it is Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, who is absolutely one of my favorite authors. This book actually reminds me a lot of The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hugo in certain ways. So just like the main character in that book is waking up every day in a different body, the main character in this book dies many times throughout the book, and every time they die, they start living again, and they're trying to fix what caused them to die in the past. So if you did read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hugo and you didn't get to this one or vice versa, I feel like you would like one if you like the other. Next up, one of my all-time favorite books, and one that I don't think I'm going to reread this year, but probably next year I'll get to it again, and that is Susanna Clarke's Piranesi, one of the most interesting books I've ever read. I definitely like books, as you can tell, that are connected to reality, but there's something different about it, something fantastical about it. And this is one of those books I don't even quite know how to explain. Like the whole time I was reading it, I almost DNF'd it. I had no idea what was going on. But then when you get to like the last fourth of the book, things start really making sense, and it's just so well done. So that's why I really do want to read this one again. I feel like you could read it so many different times and you would pick up something different each time you read it. So I don't want to say too much about the plot, just pick it up and start reading. But now for all of you guys who enjoy some romance in your books, I think you would like The Unmaking of June Farrow. This one, like the other ones, it's tied to reality, but there's a fantastical element to it. And in this book, the element is time travel. So this one kind of gives me Outlander vibes in a sense, and I was kind of surprised actually how much I did like this book. But more than even the plot, I remember really liking the writing style in this book, so I'm for sure going to be looking out for more by Adrienne Young. And next up, if you are looking for a new, darker, fantastical series to start, I would recommend Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. Sorry, The Hazelwood. So I did read this book, I think last November, maybe last October, and I really, really liked it. It's like a darker Narnia fairy tale type vibe. And this one, I think it's at least a duology, maybe even a trilogy, and I have the second one, so I really want to get to that one soon. But if you liked fairy tale by Stephen King, or you just like a darker fairy tale in general, I think you would like this. It might even technically be a young adult, so there's nothing like too crazy in it, but it's very much a November type vibe. Now we've got one of my favorite books of the year. If not my favorite book of the year, it's going to be hard to choose, but it is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. And this is one that I've been wanting to read for a long time. I finally read it a couple months ago. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this would be so good for dark academia, so good for November, but I just could not wait to read it once I got it. It's absolutely one of my favorite covers of all time, very interesting. But this follows William Shakespeare's family. He is in the story, but it's much more an emphasis on his family. And it jumps back and forth in time, which I always really like in a book, but it is mostly following his family's journey towards working through the grief of the loss of their son. Not much is actually known about Shakespeare's family and his life in general, so a lot of the story is made up, but I thought it was very clever, very well done. Next up, we have Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And I'll be honest, it's been quite a while since I read this book, but I remember I very much enjoyed it, and it is set in Savannah, which is now not too far away from me. And the story kind of plays on the fact that Savannah is beautiful. It has all these gorgeous old houses, beautiful cobblestone streets, but then in the insides of the houses, there are some secrets. And yeah, this actually is a non-fiction book. I forgot that it's non-fiction. So even cooler that all the events in this book really took place, but it definitely does read like a fictional story. So if you like Savannah, if you like that vibe, this is going to be the one for you. They might have made that into a movie too, so I need to look into that. Now we have Distant Hours by Kate Morton, and honestly, I feel like all of Kate Morton's books are great to read during this time of year. She writes like literary fiction, mysteries, and every single one of her books is so good. She's absolutely a top 3 favorite author from me, and I am like itching for another book by her. I also like that all of her books take place in 2 different periods of time. So usually there's like a big event that happened in the past, and then someone in the present is trying to figure out like a mystery attached to that. So in the past in this story, it's like during World War II era, there are 2 sister spinsters, and then in present day, Edie is trying to find out about her mom's past, and she is learning about everything that happened during that World War II time. So very good. I would say this is one of my favorites by her, but like I said, you can't go wrong picking up any of Kate Morton's books. And then lastly, I'm not going to blab on too much about this one because I just did in my October review, but we have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is a great shorter read if you're just looking for something to read on one dreary evening. You could definitely sit in the bath and read this in a couple hours. But the main character in this story is an 18-year-old, and it's very clear to the reader early on that the main character is an unreliable narrator, and you do also know early on that all of her family pretty much is dead except for her sister and her uncle. So as you go through the book, you are finding out more about what happened on the night that they died. It's not necessarily like a huge twisty kind of book, like you can guess pretty quickly what probably happened, but I love the writing style. It was definitely like kind of humorous, a little bit weird, and it definitely made me want to read more from Shirley Jackson. She actually wrote a very famous short story called The Lottery, which I think I did read in school, but I need to go back and read it, but that I think is her most famous work. So this is a fun one. If this has been on your list, then I would recommend picking it up and just reading it this year. Now let's talk about all the movies and TV shows that I picked out. I think they will definitely help you guys get in the November mood. Just a great time of year, I think, to watch some television and movies, because as much as I love to read, I definitely do like movies and TV as well. I just don't watch them as much as I read. But with the days being short, it getting dark so early now, it is a good time of year, I think, to just kind of cozy up in the evenings and watch something. So first up, let's go through some of the shows that I picked out. And there are so many, like the books, there were just so many I could have chosen, but I tried to pick the ones that like maybe you haven't seen or heard of, or just ones that I really, really love. So first up, we have Yellow Jackets, and this is a show that I had been wanting to watch for a while actually, and I just started watching it I think a couple months ago. And the show follows this high school girls soccer team. They get on a plane, they are going to like their big national championship, and the plane ends up crashing. I think in Canada is where they're supposed to be. And the show follows these girls and shows what they have to do to survive. And then also like the main timeline of the story is more present day, and it follows some of the girls grown up and kind of like how the trauma affected them. So it is a little bit dark. The first season I would say was pretty dark, but like not that bad. I'm like 2 episodes into the second season, and it seems like it is getting a little bit more horror vibes. But I'm a wuss, so if I can get through the show, then you definitely could too. And it's just really, really well done. It's definitely a very engaging show. Another show that I actually watched over the summer with my sister that I really liked is Ripley. And it's the same general story as The Talented Mr. Ripley, which was a book. I would be very interested in reading the book. And I will say, even though The Talented Mr. Ripley is like a super famous movie that a lot of people love, my sister and I both agreed that we don't really like the movie that much, but the show was so good. And the show is actually set more during summer, but it's shot all in black and white, so definitely gives it that moody, dark academia vibe. And then it also is like a darker story. There's some murder, there's some dark stuff that goes on. So even though it's technically a summer type of story, I think it's great for this time of year. Next, I have just basically anything Harlan Coben related on Netflix or Prime. I'm not the biggest Harlan Coben fan. He has written so many best-selling novels, and I've liked some of them, but yeah, he's just not my personal favorite. But his stories translated to miniseries, I think, are so good, and so many of them are set during late fall, so I think they're just great to watch during this time of year, and they are like darker mysteries. There are quite a few miniseries by him on Netflix, I think at least like 8 to 10, and then I think there's even a couple more on Prime. So I've watched a lot of them. I feel like those are my go-to. If I have a sick day or something, I just totally binge a whole mini series, and it takes like 6 hours, and they're so good. They really draw you in. Another show that I watched over the summer was The Gentleman, and technically the show is like over many seasons, but a lot of the show is during the fall, and it's set in England, and there's a huge beautiful house, so very picturesque for sure. And if you saw the Gentleman movie with Matthew McConaughey, which came out maybe like 5 years ago or something like that, it's kind of like the prequel to that movie. So I liked it. I would definitely say I like it more aesthetically than the story itself. It was just a very beautiful show. And then one of my favorite shows of all time, I do want to rewatch this one soon, that is Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman. Just watch it. Like if you haven't seen it, my goodness, watch this show. So good. Absolutely a top 3 favorite show for me. And when they were coming out, there were like many years between each season. So if you have not seen them, you're lucky because you can just binge them all. But yeah, Sherlock is so good, so November. Now let's talk about movies. One of my favorite movies of all time, I think is great to watch during this time of year, and that is The Prestige with Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. And it follows these 2 magicians who are competing with each other. It follows them throughout many years of their life, and it's just so good. Like, I don't love rewatching things, to be honest, but I could watch that movie every single year. Another one that is hard to watch but is so good, I haven't seen it for a while though, is The Pianist. It's a World War II Holocaust type of movie, so very difficult to watch, but very good. Definitely one of the best in that category. Atonement is another one of my favorites. I love both the book and movie pretty equally, honestly, which I feel like is pretty rare. Read the book first and then watch the movie if you haven't done either yet. But Keira Knightley and James McAvoy, 2 of my favorite actors, and it's another just beautiful movie. October Sky, a young Jake Gyllenhaal movie. Haven't seen this one for a while either. I might have to give this a rewatch this year, but this is great if you are looking for a very very fall aesthetic academic movie. And then finally I said Hugo, which is a movie that was based off of a very beautiful middle grade book. The story is told almost entirely through pictures. And I know the author has written a few other ones or drawn a few other ones in the same way, so I definitely want to check them out. But yeah, they turned that book into a movie a while ago, probably 10 plus years ago, and it was well done, visually aesthetic, so definitely check that out, especially if you're looking for a family-friendly movie to watch with your kids. So for me, over the next few weeks, I'm going to be finishing The Yellow Jackets Season 2. I haven't watched it in like a month, honestly, but I really want to finish it before the month is over. And then I also really want to watch The Goldfinch, which has Ansel Elgort, and that is based off of the book written by Donna Tartt. That's one of my favorite books for sure. The Goldfinch is absolutely another great dark academia read. It's been a while since I've read that one, so I'll probably read that next November. But if you've read that and haven't seen the movie yet, it is on Prime, so I'm definitely going to be watching that soon. And then I also really want to watch Jojo Rabbit, which also might be on Prime. I think it's a World War II movie. I think it's kind of like a dark humor, and I know it won a lot of awards when it came out a while ago. So those are the three main things that I will be watching. I'm sure I'll squeeze another movie or two in, but yeah, I do spend a lot more time reading than watching things. But alright you guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it, thinking about what I could recommend for you all. I know some of the books I talked about were quite popular, but I would say they were popular for a reason. But hopefully you did get at least one or two recommendations of books that you never heard of before. I'm excited to put out just a couple more fall videos, and then I'm itching to get in the Christmas spirit. But I would encourage you all, as I'm encouraging myself, to really soak up November, appreciate it for what it is before really jumping into Christmas. If you like this video, please make sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help my channel out a lot. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!